Trees are very interesting for thinking domestication because, especially in Western culture, we think of trees and forests as being what is most wild, at the limits of civilization, maybe full of bandits and wild animals. But quite surprisingly, many tree species have been domesticated or semi-domesticated for a long time. And I'm interested in looking at landscapes and reading the traces of these former domestications. So right now I'm working in Italy, where domesticated trees of various kinds have been important in stabilizing the landscape. So chestnut trees, olive trees, even grapevines, all of them are very important in producing a cultivated landscape of beauty and complexity. When we look closely at how people cultivate these trees, we see that the tree changes its shape partly in response to pruning and cutting and shaping, partly because the tree has its own desires and plans. And I can look at ancient trees and see the echo of the peasant who grafted this chestnut tree 500 years ago. And he's long dead, but generations of other peasants have cared for the tree and continued the care to this present day. And it's both the echo of something that happened centuries ago and alive right now, and it's continuing and ongoing. When we think of domestication as ongoing and as not being necessarily about what looks most close to the home, so in other words, the forest that is far from us is actually domesticated also, maybe we think of domestication as being not so close to civilization, but as having a less controlled and dominated landscape, and as maybe being more open to more complicated ways of living. So one of the reasons why we need to have many ways of imagining environmental sustainability and landscapes and forests and agriculture is that we're facing global environmental change. Some people call this the Anthropocene, lots of names for it. And I think it's very important not to think it's just one force and one thing, but that it's actually many kinds of things going on at the same time. And we have to be able to pay attention to what's going on in many different kinds of ways. So looking closely at how people and trees work against each other is one of those ways. So we don't want to have everyone agree that climate change is the same thing. Where I work in Italy, people understand climate change quite well by looking at the impact of floods and rains on the soil and the landscapes that they care about. And so they're attending to soil and landscapes. They're not even necessarily worried about what we call climate change in the international scientific community. And I think that's very reasonable.